Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder All Weather here. Hope one out there enjoyed your weekend. We've got a lot of heat that's really going to be building across the U.S. as we head into August. And on the northern periphery of that ridge, we are going to have to be concerned about some severe storms, as well as the tropics. They're starting to get active after a little bit of a lull the last 2 weeks. We do have a little bit of an active tropical wave that we'll be watching as it traverses across the Atlantic basin. So if we look at the satellite picture, this morning, we've got a little bit of a monsoonal flow that's streaming in off the Pacific and heading into those areas across the Four Corners region. But you can see where the ridge is really going to start to build, especially across the southern plains and in the Pacific Northwest. And on the northern periphery of that ridge, we do have some instability. And actually, showers and thunderstorms are breaking out this morning across St. Louis into Chicago region, and then lighter amounts as it traverses across southeast through Indiana, as well as into Ohio, and portions of West Virginia, as well as into the Carolinas. But you out here into the Atlantic basin, you can actually see out here just, east of the Windward Islands here, we've got a little bit of a disturbed weather. It's not much right now, but a lot of indications in a couple of days, this is going to be trying to get its act together and might develop a little bit of a low pressure as it continues west-northwest bound. In fact, the National Hurricane Center does in fact upgrade it to this a 50% probability over the next 7 days of trying to develop into a tropical storm. So remember, they extended the cone from 5 days to now 7 days. So we have a 0% chance this is going to be formed at all over the next 48 hours. But they have in fact upgraded to a medium probability of a 50% chance as this tropical wave will try to get its act together as it gets closer to the areas of the Bahamas, and then we'll be going over all the details on where it might actually go from there. So if we break it down for you, as far as the GFS ensembles, these haven't been really bullish on this particular system, but there are several members that continue to try to deform it out here into the Bahamas and spread it into areas of Florida over the next 7 days. And if we take a look at the European ensembles, they've actually been the most bullish on this system, and it actually could develop into a tropical depression or possibly a tropical storm. If it does, it will actually take the name Debby, and with the likelihood of it when it may develop is out here towards the Bahamas. And again, that might not be until about 7 days from now. And this will continue west-northwest bound. And this is over 10 days from the European ensembles. You can see most of the parameters actually keeps it offshore east of Florida and skirting the coast of the eastern seaboard. So we'll be keeping an eye on this fairly closely. But just July has been kind of an unusual month because the fact that out west we've been dealing with that dominant ridge of high pressure that's been pretty much locked over a good part of the west coast. That's why California's just been inundated with all those, unfortunately, fires out there, as well as a good part of the Northwest with all that heat into Montana and Idaho. And it's been warm out east as well. But look at this, folks. Look at the middle of the country. It's been unusually cooler, if not, milder for summer standards just for July, with those averaged, if not below average, for a good chunk of the central U.S., the central plains, as well as the southern plains. But all that's going to come to an end as the ridge of high pressure will be spreading from west into the central U.S. and eventually kind of take over a good part of the U.S. And a lot of heat is going to be starting to build. So it kind of all starts today. So there's the ridge of high pressure locked over the southern plains. You can see this dominant ridge, 594 DM. That's a fairly healthy heat ridge. And under that heat ridge, that's where all the sinking air is, and it's almost going to be next to impossible to rain in that type of atmosphere. But usually on the northern periphery of that ridge, that's where we have to look out for possibly some gusty winds and some severe storms. And that's exactly what we're going to be looking for over the next couple of days. And if we turn our attention way up here to Alaska, it's actually been fairly chilly, if not cooler. And actually some of those spots, if not, it's not technically that rare, but they actually did find, see a couple of spots and even some snow over the last couple of days. So there is some cooler air out there for sure. And it's definitely up there, up into Northern America, up in there into Alaska. But further closer to home. Here's the convection that we're dealing with this morning across areas of Chicago and around the St. Louis region. These are diving southeast. There are some showers and thunderstorms across Louisville and to portions of the Carolinas, and we'll be watching the northern periphery of that ridge where we have to be concerned about some of these turning severe into the heat of the afternoon, heading into the early evening time frame. So those areas into the Bismarck region, back into Rapid City, back into Sioux Falls again, those could be some gusty wind producers of the 65, 70 mile per hour variety range. Some larger hail associated with it, but these are mainly going to be a gusty, stronger wind producers. And these, once they originate, they will traverse on the northern periphery of that ridge. So it pretty much puts these areas in line from Minneapolis to Des Moines, back into Milwaukee, getting in Chicago with the convection this morning. They're going to have another round as we head into later this evening through Springfield, back into St. Louis, as well as into Louisville and getting into Jackson. And you can see the convection as we head into that, say, 6, 7 o'clock time frame. There will be more showers and thunderstorms start to blow up, complements of the heat of the afternoon through the Dakotas. Those will traverse southeast, and we'll have to be dealing with some rounds of gusty winds and some severe storms. Typically, these could be some downburst and even microburst winds are not out of the question with these particular cells as these will traverse across, southeast. But they are going to be windy. They do have some stronger winds associated with them. So those will try to get its act together around 6, 7 o'clock tonight through the Dakotas and continue into the evening time frame through the Sioux Falls region as well as into Iowa. And those will traverse southeast, getting in through Illinois, back into Indiana, and eventually head up into areas of Tennessee and back into Kentucky as we head into tomorrow. So if you look at the convection over the next 24 to 36 hours, you have the storms originating back here into the Dakotas. These will traverse southeast through Iowa, back into Illinois, through Indiana, as well as into Kentucky, back through Tennessee. And then we'll also have some sea breeze action heading through Florida and really along the coast where they still have that little meandering stalled frontal boundary that they got inundated with a lot of heavy rain, especially along the coastal regions. That's still there. It's not much left, but it's still there that could produce some at least isolated showers into the heat of the afternoon for the next 24 to 36 hours. But eventually the ridge is going to be taken over and the heat is going to be going up. So these are going to be some of the hottest temperatures so far of summer that you're going to be dealing with across the plains. Look at that, folks. 108 there into Kansas, 104 into the Amarillo region. So definitely triple-digit temperatures will start to take over, at least for the middle part of the country. And that's exactly where the heat is building. And we're going to be dealing with widespread heat advisories and excessive heat warnings. So all those areas in orange, we're looking at a heat index, what it feels like to the body, potentially 105 in the afternoon. Once you get at that excessive heat criteria, now we're talking to 110 range, could be even 115 in some of these isolated areas across Arkansas as well as into Kansas. But yes, going into Tuesday, really nothing changes because the ridge is still there. In fact, it's only going to expand as we get deeper into the week. So we'll be looking at another convection complex that will blow up through the Dakotas and travel southeastward through Minneapolis, back through Des Moines again, as well as another Springfield region. And those will continue through the Nashville area and back through Knoxville. And there's the ridge by Wednesday. All it does is just kind of expand, right? It'll just expand even more and actually intrude a little bit further north. And that will obviously put the storm threat a little bit further north as well as we head into Wednesday afternoon. And that's exactly where the SPC has the highest potential for some of those stronger storms turning severe through now areas of Sioux Falls again, back into Minneapolis, and actually through Des Moines as these will continue, southeast bound. But we're also going to be dealing with some Saharan dust. This has been pretty prevalent over the last couple of weeks. And I think this is kind of the last hurrah, if you will, because I do feel the tropics are going to be heating up in a big way. But closer to home, there's areas of Texas and to Oklahoma and to, say, Arkansas, back into Louisiana. Not out of the question, those could be some hazy skies with that Saharan dust making it all the way off the coast of Africa and back inland into the U.S. So don't be surprised if you start to see some hazy skies if you live in that area, you know, as we head into Wednesday and then Thursday. And I think by Friday that will start to subside at least a little bit. But the temperatures are going to be cranking up in a big way with much of the West, you know, with Idaho. Boise has just been crazy hot this summer. We'll still be checking in with those triple-digit temperatures well into the upper 90s, if not triples, back into Montana. And then, of course, as the ridge will expand through the Dakotas, through the Central Plains, more triple-digit temperatures as we'll expand. The only try to cooler, if not somewhat average conditions in town are going to be across the upper Great Lakes. Well, we do have a little bit of a trough maybe trying to build, and that could be more of a steering mechanism. Well, what happens with that little low pressure down there into the Atlantic. So, but for the next 5 days, this is where the ridge is pretty much locked over the southern plains, next to impossible almost to rain into out of that atmosphere. So we'll be looking out of the northern periphery of that ridge, and there's the storms that develop through the Dakotas, through Minnesota, back into Wisconsin area, as well as through Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, you know, back into, you know, Tennessee, through Ohio, as well as into West Virginia, and get lighter amounts as you get further into the coast through the Carolinas. And by Saturday, we'll be watching that low pressure. So by then, it's probably going to be a little bit closer now towards potentially the Bahamas. At least that's what the European ensembles were kind of hinting at. We could be looking at, you know, 1,000 millibar low pressure center trying to develop out here off the southeast coast towards the Bahamas region. And I think it's going to be influenced by this little, you know, this little cooler air loft, this little trough that's trying to develop across, you know, areas of the Great Lakes, and that will traverse through areas of Illinois back into Ohio and Indiana. That could be the steering mechanism, which actually maybe, you know, trying to pick that thing up and like shift it out into the open waters and become just more of a fish storm if it does develop into the name Debby. But what really stands out is a lot of orange on the map, and that just means it's just a lot of heat that really will build, and some dangerous heat if that. So yes, we got a lot more heat coming for those areas across the West, but especially as we head into August, that first week of August, the heat is going to crank it up in a big way, with excessive high heat back through Idaho, as well as into Montana, through Wyoming. That just extends through the Four Corners regions, through Colorado, back into the southern plains, the central plains. That just continues to be inundated. It's really just the southeast that may be, you know, influenced with a little bit of, you know, cloudier skies, more rain shower opportunities. That could be, you know, slightly, somewhat, if not, you know, cooler weather, but you're going to be, you know, cranking up with the heat. So, but nonetheless, I mean, the heat's going to be pretty prevalent off a good part of New England, there in the Northeast in that first week of August, which is typically, you know, August is your hottest month, so it's not obviously that unusual, but fairly, you know, somewhat with the dust that's going to continue across the Atlantic Basin and then getting into portions of the Southern Plains as we head through the middle of the week. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely hit the subscribe button and catch my next update. Wire protect you before and after the storm.